Okay, so you watched the first direction video, and now I want to go over the sample because I feel like the model is really the best way to get across what it is that you need to do. This is a very simple model. When we originally wrote this, we were only using 2 sources. So I did incorporate a third source at the end, but ideally we will see your 3 sources sprinkled throughout rather than, overly relying on 2 of them. So you start with a good title that really kind of pulls us in. In a sense, when you're dealing with nonfiction, your title, it's like your headline, it's often the attention getter. I went through actually last night a bunch of different articles because I was trying to pull articles for you to show you attention getters. And what I noticed was that now, especially with news being on the internet, publications want to pull you in immediately, and often people don't read past the headline when they're deciding whether or not to read. So now the way attention getters are being approached is a bit different in internet news. So we started with Rosa Parks, enough is enough. Now, in this first paragraph, you're going to see this is where we put the thesis. So this is, doesn't look the way the other essays that we normally write look, because this is it's a web page, it's like a web article. So I still started with an attention getter, but I started with a quote directly from Rosa Parks. And I think it might be worthy of consideration for you as you plan on an attention getter to maybe look at people that you might actually quote. I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks' simple but brave act of protest led to the end of bus segregation and inspired others to fight discrimination during the civil rights movement. And so what you see here, I didn't really need a bridge since I quoted her, and then I began talking about her. I have my thesis statement. You know that you are kind of summarizing the event and that you are discussing its impact on the civil rights movement. So your thesis should look similar to my thesis. So you're going to see we used subheadings, and we've read a number of articles with subheadings, and because you are writing what would be a web article, subheadings are a fantastic idea. And so you'll see we actually divided our information into 3 sections and then a 4th for the conclusion. So you're going to see here we kind of have the background information. Enough is enough. That's when we get to that original conflict in the chart, where we get to really where the event comes to a head and you have that major problem. Here we kind of have what resulted, the resolution part of your chart, and how it then impacted the civil rights movement. So we have kind of the last 2 sections of the chart here. And then down here we have the conclusion. So I've ordered to the back of the bus. It is just a regular brisk winter's day in Montgomery, Alabama on December 1st, 1955. The protagonist, Rosa Parks, a 42-year-old African-American woman, is taking the bus home from work, as she does each day. In Montgomery, African Americans had to sit in the back of the bus and give up their seats to a white person if asked. On that day in December, Rosa Parks is in the back of the bus. Unfortunately, the bus fills up and she is asked to give up her seat by a white person. James A. Blake is the bus driver who asks Rosa Parks to give up her seat that day. Not only does he ask Parks to move, but he also asks 3 other black riders to leave their seats because it is illegal for a black person to even sit in the same row as a white rider. But she's the only one to refuse in the end. So I want to show you something here. You can tell the first bit of information, it's all paraphrased or summarized, which is fine. But you can tell it came from the source that was titled Rosa Parks. So did the information here. If you look in your boxes, those are separate pieces of information. And so we can cite them separately in the work. So you kind of, if you think about it, in the number of parenthetical citations you have in your chart, you'll have a similar number of citations in your work. Down here, you can tell this information, it was a mixture of 2 different sources. So you can see the way you cite that is you just put both citations in with a semicolon in between the two. So the title, I didn't have an author for this source. So the title was James Blake, and I didn't have an author for this source. So you can see I just put the article titles in the parentheses with the semicolon in between. And if you go over to my chart and you count how many citations I have, again, you're going to find a similar number. You can also use the wrapping technique that we talked about as well. But again, you'll see I summarized and paraphrased. You're allowed to quote too. But if you do quote, make sure you have a nice explanation behind it. Enough is enough. When Black cannot get her to move, he feels the need to call the police. And you can see again, both sources gave me that information, so I quoted both sources. It really makes it look pretty credible, the fact that I've got two different sources saying the same thing. He was later quoted by a reporter, "I wasn't trying to do anything to that Parks woman except do my job. She was in violation of the city codes. What was I supposed to do?" That, and you can see ... because I left out some of the quote. "That bus was full and she wouldn't move back. I had my orders. I had police powers. Any driver for the city did. So the bus filled up and a white man got on and she had a seat and I told her to move back and she wouldn't do it. The police show up and arrest Rosa Parks. Because Rosa is popular and well-liked, many people are outraged at her arrest." And again, you're going to notice this doesn't necessarily follow our ICE. And the reason being, most of this is more summary than it is argumentation or the other types of writing that we've done. So I do want you to see that there is a difference sometimes in the kinds of writing that we're doing. This one is kind of summarizing an event and then just discussing its impact. So this is more research. We are not going to take this sitting down. So here we kind of described that conflict. Here we're getting into the results and how they affected the civil rights movement. As a result of Rosa's arrest, a bus boycott is organized. The bus boycott lasts 381 days. It does not end until the city of Montgomery discontinues discriminatory segregation policies on public buses. Rosa Parks became known as the mother of the civil rights movement because she was not a young idealist. She was a well-respected woman who had fought civil rights battles before. Rosa Parks' act of defiance not only ended a discriminatory practice, it also inspired people to stand up against inequality as activists in the civil rights movement. And what I'm realizing is I definitely need a transition here. But you can see we went into, so we had that that event, that conflict, that original problem. And then we got into how it then had this chain reaction effect on the civil rights movement. And then we kind of stepped back and looked at overall, what was her role in the civil rights movement. And then, so I don't love this conclusion. So I would like to revise it, but we have what can we learn from Rosa? And I think that might be a nice kind of subheading, what can we learn from this event? And then I returned to my hook and I ended with a call to action for my reader. Knowing what needs to be done is the first step. Committing to doing it is the next. Fear then falls away and simple but brave acts can change the country and even the world. I will put this in Google Classroom so you can continue to refer to the sample. You'll see something I didn't point out. Here's where I pulled in my next source, Rosa Parks, Mother of the Movement. And because it started with Rosa Parks and this one started with Rosa Parks, I thought I might be in trouble. But luckily, it had Mother of the Movement as part of the title. And so you can see I just included that information as well so that you can tell the difference between the two sources. If I didn't have this subheading here, then I would have had to put the website name for this one and the website name for this one so we could differentiate between the two.